Alright, I got both cookers inside my lovely barn. And we're going to get this prepped. So, a couple things to definitely consider before doing anything. Number one, whatever your heat source is, make sure that it's in good condition. Check it beforehand. I've got two burners. They are propane burners, and they are in good condition. I have two propane tanks, 1 and 2. That one's pretty much full. This one is almost empty, so I have a backup in the event that this one starts to die during cooking. Not the end of the world if you're using propane and you run out, as long as you have backups. Ideally, if you're cooking, you always want to have at least one backup for both. I'm not in the ideal circumstance. I only have one backup right now. Eventually, when I go to, well, if this one dies, I'm going to go get it refilled, and I'm probably going to go ahead and purchase a new one as well. That way I have 4 propane tanks circulating at any given time for 2 cookers. A must. A must, a must, a must. You know what this is. And you want to double check the gauge every single time before doing anything. I'm in the green, we are full. All right. Honestly, I'd recommend having that regardless of how you cook these, just in the off chance that everything goes to hell in a handbasket. Okay, oh, forgot my heat source. If you are using these propane burners, definitely recommend getting one of these. Really not worth getting your hand close in there with a little, you know, matches or a little cigarette lighter or something like that. You're definitely not worth it. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and open that up all the way. And righty tighty, lefty loosey. You can hear it. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I can hear it now. That always happens, and it still freaks me out every time. The nice thing about these burners, by the way, is that you can really amp them up so that it's not hard to get these things up to regular cooking within about 15 or so minutes. That's the nice thing about using this versus your gas stove, because your gas stove is probably going to take at least an hour to get these things up to full pressure. Oop. Good job, me. Now, I bought these burners about 5 years in between one or the other, so I honestly can't remember which one was first and which one was second. I'm pretty sure this is the second one because it looks a little bit older. But the reason why I mention that is because you can notice slight variations in each model, even though they're technically the same. And also how the fire is conducted. This one seems more like a blowtorch. That one just seems more like a freaking bonfire that's gone out of control slightly. Anyway, now we wait. I'm going to come back in about hopefully 15 or so minutes, and I'm going to show you exactly what to do once these get up to pressure. The small one is pretty easy peasy. This one's a bit more involved. Yeah, and we'll also see if this one spurts out water again. If it does, then I know I've got a bigger problem than I let on. All right, see y'all soon. All right, so we've already gotten one ready, and it's only been about 13 minutes since we started. They're both climbing up pretty much at an equal pace, which is awesome given the fact that one's almost double the size. But you can start hearing it now. The pressure reliever is starting to make a hissing noise. As you can see, we are a little bit shy of 15 psi. Once we hit 15 psi, what's going to effectively happen is that it's going to start to make a kind of noise. Well, as you hear it. Once it becomes pervasive and consistent, that's when you're going to want to bring down the temperature and let this cook for at least 2 hours. Now, I've heard people range between 2 and 2.5 hours. That's usually the golden area. Anybody who says 3, 4, 5 hours, no, don't do that. You're wasting gas. All right, we're going to wait for the other one, and then we'll go on from there. All right, so you can see from there, maybe not, well, I can see, we're almost at 20 psi. So, once that happens, what we're going to do is we're going to actually let this nozzle flick all the way up and then drain all the pressure from there. So, before I do anything, let me go get my glove, because So I do not want to touch that with my bare hands. Steam is no joke. I had a glove. This is a glove. This will work. All right. Now, if this is done correctly, only steam's going to come out. We will see. Yes. All right, as you can see, the gauge is slowly ticking down. This is working like a charm. So I was right. It's definitely that tube. You want to make sure that the tube does not go to the base of the sterilizer. Sorry for the loud noise. If you're doing this, you'll get used to it. You see that fire is really enjoying the commotion. Alright, the gauge isn't really going down any further from here, so whenever that happens, I usually just turn it off. No sense in potentially just, completely cooking out all your water. I don't want that to happen. Maybe that's the wrong step. I don't know. We will find out. Now, here's a quick rule. Whenever you're finished getting the gauge up to the area that you want it to be, you really want to make sure that you bring the heat back. Otherwise, things will blow up. Yeah, so as you can see, it's already climbed back up to 15 psi. Now it really only dropped about 8 psi, so it's not too surprising that it jumps back up so quickly. I want to see if I can get it right at the green, which is 17 psi, and then I'm going to drop the heat back quite a bit. And then I'm going to basically sit here for 2.5 hours roughly, watching these things like a hawk. Now, I should point out that I actually made videos prior detailing all of this, but unfortunately half of them, the audio never actually worked. I'm hoping the audio works on these, otherwise I'll be pissed again. Anyway, I'm going to take what I had that did work and tie it in with the videos that I made earlier today. So there will be a little bit of a glitch with the continuity of everything, but if you're willing to, let that slide, stay tuned. There's going to be more in for you. Thank you. Quick, folks, I wanted to mention something. As I was discussing beforehand, this propane tank, well, that one now was on its last legs, and indeed, about 40 minutes into cooking, it died. So luckily I was here. I switched it out with the new one. It's going alright. I got it back up. It dropped by about 5 psi, and now I gotten it back up. A word, if you decide to use these specific burners or ones like it, something that I've noticed. That little device right there. These things are fantastic in the fact that they kind of act like blowtorches, as you heard. But they can be finicky if you don't know what you're doing. When you first start this up, what you want to do is turn on this before releasing this valve. Let about 30 seconds between this and this being turned on. My prediction is that pressure builds up right here, and as a result, you get that torch going as you heard in the beginning. If you don't, the best flame you'll get looks kind of like that, and I think it's acting like up again as well. So, oh, there it goes. Okay. Yeah, so these, it's kind of like a stove in that each one is a little bit different. You got to kind of play around with it and learn its little foibles. All right, back later. Welcome back. I am in the current process of cooking Substrate. That's the medium that you use for growing mushrooms. And I thought while I was doing this, I would give you some nice little videos, informational, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, I ran into some technical difficulties, and the videos that I put together that showed you the startup process, showed you a couple of things not to do, things to do. Yeah, the mic wasn't working, so it would have been really boring to post that, so I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit instead about some of the inputs that you would need to actually go through the phase of cooking Substrate, as well as their potential costs. Now, as you can see, I am using two different All-American, well, that one's a pressure cooker, this one's a sterilizer, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about both. Now, the All-American pressure cooker. Sorry. Yeah. This I purchased back in 2015 when I was first interested in getting into mushroom growing. Unfortunately, it is not the best tool to use, at least on a commercial sense. It is, however, probably pretty usable if you're interested in just getting into mushroom growing as a hobby. The reason why I say for that is because it's cheaper. Simple as that. So, I actually use this, as you can see, on a propane burner. The burner itself, the brand is Bayou Classic. This one I purchased back in 2015 for about $80 some odd. Right now, I think the price tag is around $110, at least last time I checked, which was several months ago. And there's the propane tank. So if you are starting from scratch, you don't have any of these products. A propane tank you can get from a hardware store, you can get it from your grocery store. Brand new, not switching out, brand new, I want to say is around $45 to $50 before taxes. And all these are with before taxes and, of course, you know, not including any shipping or anything of that nature. Excuse me. So, $50 plus maybe $110, you're looking at around $160, excuse me, for the tools that you need to actually, you know, provide your heat source. The pressure cooker, the All-American, this model, you won't be able to see, it's a 921, I want to say it's a 25-quart pressure cooker. That means that it's got the old school weight. I'm not even sure if these are even offered anymore. I haven't really seen them on, but if you get it with the weight, you can have a 5, 10, 15 PSI weight on it. I'm at 15 PSI. That is the standard that you want to use when you are cooking substrate. The purpose of cooking substrate, by the way, is to actually sterilize the substrate itself so that there's no foreign bacteria inside when you actually go to inoculate it with mycelium. As you can see, the pressure gauge right now is just at the 15 PSI marker. That's around 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry for you Celsius folks, I'm not going to do the conversion. So, yeah, this, again, bought in 2015. I have not researched what the price tag is nowadays, but at least my observations have been that there hasn't been a lot of divergence from the prices back then to the prices nowadays. I want to say I spent about $260, not including shipping and handling. So let's just say that you spent $160 on the burning source, and then of course the cooker itself, you paid another $260. You're looking at, well, that's $220 plus another $200. That's $420 roughly, again, not including taxes or shipping. I guess when you're thinking about the all of the hobbies that you can have out there, it's not too expensive. But, you know, it's not exactly cheap either. Now, on to the 41-quart sterilizer. This, again, All-American. This is your model number 1941X. And so this right here I purchased about 2 months ago, and I think it was around $650, not including taxes, shipping, all that good stuff. So you're looking at $160 for the burning source, plus another $660 right there. You're looking at around $820 just for one of these. And if this, well, number one, I wouldn't recommend buying this if you're just a hobbyist. But if you're looking at getting commercial, this is pretty much what you will start off with. Unless you have more money than you know what to do with, this is what 90% it seems of small mushroom cultivators use. And they usually get a couple of these. So for me, ideally, in a perfect world, I would want to have 4 of these. And so 800, let's just round down to $800 times 4, you're looking at $3,200. That is, well, to me, that's a pretty large upfront cost. But the good news is that this bad boy will actually cook 6 substrate bags at a time. And they can be pretty sizable substrate bags as well. My average substrate bag is around 6 pounds, 4 ounces, or 8 ounces, around that area. The reason why I go for that size is because this little boy right here can't really accommodate more than 4 of those size bags. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, I want to do 10-pound bags, but there's no way in hell I'm getting 4 10-pound substrate bags in that thing. It barely holds what's in there now. This, however, can easily do 6 10-pound bags. And if you get 4 of these things, I mean, you know, it becomes a pretty usable tool. Now, I am in the process of cooking, and as you can see, this one is actually acting up. I think that, yeah, this propane tank is actually on its last leg, so I'm probably going to have to switch it out here pretty soon. Anyway, the reason why I'm sitting here in the frigid air is because these a downside to them is that you're going to have to be kind of keeping constant vigil on them. I cook for 2 to 2.5 hours for each. It really depends on you. I've never seen anybody go over 2.5 hours. I've seen people who are very successful do only 2 hours at a time. It's up to you whether or not you want to go 2 to 2.5. The ideal situation, though, is that you want to make it that you have enough time to properly sterilize the substrate inside your cooking medium. So if you're doing 6-pound bags, 2 hours is probably fine. If you're going to be doing 10-pound bags, like I hope to be doing one of these days, 2.5 hours is probably a safer bet. Anyway, enough on that. Before I forget, All American also does provide, and these are more costly, but they do provide sterilizers of this model that are electrical. What I mean by that is that you can actually plug them into different wall sockets. I think that it's either, you can get 2 different versions. I think it's 160 volt and then 220 volt. I'll have the exact information in the notes below. But those can be plugged into an electrical source, and that allows you to better regulate the temperature of the cook. So if you've got the money to blow and you also have the infrastructure to use it, because this isn't like your little 3-prong wall socket. Well, one of them is, I believe, but the other one is basically kind of like your dryer wall socket. You're going to need to have separate electrical fixtures for all of that, and, you know, putting that together, I don't know what the costs are, but I know that it ain't cheap. Alright, while I'm sitting here cooking my substrate, I wanted to give a little bit of time dedicated to talking just about the substrate cooking process, a couple of my thoughts about it, things that I've experienced, and, you know, run into, that kind of thing. So, a note about time. If you are looking into getting this on a commercial scale, one thing you're going to want to be very cognizant of is the time frame in which it takes you to do this. So, I am a solo operation. I do not have any help whatsoever. I have, you know, I can get help lifting heavy things and that kind of nature, but, you know, for the most part, it's just me. On average, I have cooked, I don't know, maybe a dozen times now, and it takes me anywhere from 6 to 8 hours from start to finish. And what I mean by that is basically putting together the process from putting together the substrate, mixing all the ingredients together, to getting them into autoclavical bags, to getting those bags into the sterilizers, to getting the sterilizers into my barn, and then going through the process of cooking. So, right now it is around 8, it's getting to be 8 o'clock at night. I started really late today, unfortunately, and it's in the middle of winter, so it's pretty cold. So, you know, if you're a fortunate individual where you have a lot of space to do this, then worrying about, you know, conditions outdoors and that kind of thing are probably not what you have to concern yourself about. But, I mean, unless you already have that, it's something you want to be cognizant of, because ideally I would want to do this during the best time of the day, aka from 10 to 6. It's warm outside. It's as warm as it's going to be anyway. The ambient temperature in the growing area is not so different from what it is inside the sterilizers. I mean, ambient temperature does play a factor into this. If it was 60 degrees in this barn right now, I wouldn't have to worry about, you know, taking so long to get the temperature up on the sterilizers. I wouldn't have to worry about it fluctuating where I'm sitting here having to constantly watch the gauges. That's why I'm looking over here right now. I'm keeping a constant eye on the gauges, making sure that they don't jump up or jump down too quickly. And when you're finished, you don't have to worry about the gauges or the sterilizers cooling down so quickly that they actually potentially burst the bags inside. That has been a problem with some other growers in the past. Maybe it was because they were using inferior bags. I don't know exactly, but it's always something that's playing a part in my mind. And as a matter of fact, what I do to kind of counteract that is that when I'm finished cooking, before I would actually put the burners on low for about an hour, slowly bring the PSI down to 0 instead of it kind of dropping down at a rapid pace. But since then I've stopped doing that, and I basically put blankets on top of each sterilizer, and I just turn the power off entirely. It saves gas. It lets me run more cooks before I have to switch out the propane tanks. It's it's worked out so far. I've yet to have any bags suffer destruction due to cooling down too quickly. Now, I have had other issues occur where there wasn't enough water inside my pressure cooker, the small one, and it actually was cooking without water inside it, and as a result, 2 bags ruptured. So that's another thing you want to be very cognizant of when you are cooking. Anyway, starting up with the process, the first thing you want to do is get a good recipe and put that recipe, mix it together. There are methods of doing that. I will put a video with regards to how to do that later on. I actually have 3 separate recipes that I'm playing around with right now. I'm finishing up on my first recipe, seeing how that works, and then I'll go into the next recipe, test that out relative to the first one, and then I'll do the third recipe, and then we'll see what works best. And it could also be that one recipe is better for one type of mushroom versus the other. Who knows? That's the joy of experimentation. What else? After going through that process, then you want to fill up your bags. And so for me, typically going from the fact of actually mixing the substrate to filling up the bags and getting them into my sterilizers, that can take me anywhere from 1.5 to 2 hours. And the reason why it takes me that long is simply because of the areas in which I'm doing these are kind of spread out all over the place. I have, in my mixing room is in my basement, and then when I am ready to bring the bags filled up and put them into my pressure cookers, I actually do that in the kitchen because my kitchen is close to my garage, where I actually load the pressure cookers onto a 4-wheeler and then bring it into the barn. So everything's all spread out around the place, and that actually does kind of have a factor. I'm going up and down stairs, I'm moving things by hand, and you know, just the time frame it takes for me to transport all stuff from one location to another location to another location, it does eat up time. So by the time I'm actually in here and I'm prepping for cooking, I've probably spent about 3 hours to 3.5 hours, maybe even 4, doing everything else. The good news is that once you actually have everything cooking, then you're pretty much on a waiting game. And I'm moving right now because of my larger sterilizer is actually getting a little bit hot. It's at 19 almost right now, so I've got to bring down the temperature a bit. And I do that strictly by, if you see right here, this right here relegates how much propane is being shot in from the tank at any given time. And again, that's the Bayou Classic. If you buy another type of burner, you might have to figure out how to relegate temperature in a different way. That's, you know, just what it is. Now, the reason why I actually got the Bayou Classics is because when I was researching, they seemed at the time to be the best bang for the buck. I am constantly looking for the lowest cost alternative, and I'm at the same time trying to find something that has decent reviews. 90% of what I buy is on Amazon, and we all know now that those reviews are subject to tampering, so it's not a perfect system, but it's what I use. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. I really can't think of anything else other than that I'll see you when I'm finished with this. All right, it has been 2.5 hours, and these are ready to be shut off. Now, before I do that real quick, I wanted to make a quick note. I was thinking while I was sitting there. If you are interested in getting into this industry and you are looking more at the smaller pressure cooker, I would actually recommend against getting a pressure cooker for this purpose. The reason being is because it's not exactly, well, when I purchased this, it was pretty much the standard in the industry. But since then, these kinds of sterilizers are much more popular in general. So you can actually get a smaller sterilizer that would have the same fixture setup as you see here. You would have the release valve, you would have the pressure gauge, and of course you can get to much higher cook rates. Well, not much higher, but you can get higher PSI than just 15. Also, this doohickey right here, I'll be honest, you're going to lose it. I mean, I'm amazed I haven't lost it yet. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen anytime soon. Hey, look, some wood. But, yeah, so there's that. Okay, so now we're ready to close these off. Really simple process, really. Go in here. It's off. It's off. Yep, it's off. You'll be able to hear it just by the sound in case it didn't come up in audio. Same thing. Righty-tighty. You heard it turn off, maybe. It turned off, though. And then turn off this piece. Man, this one is really opened. Okay, cool. Okay, so that's done. And then what I like to do, I have these, well, kind of blankets. This one, just take it, open her up. It's much easier to do this with two hands. There we go. There you go. The other one, these are bed covers that I use. They're old. They're dirty, but they serve the purpose. They're padded. Sorry, I have to use a finger to try to get this one on. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this with just one hand. And you get it on there. So yeah, leave these things overnight. Again, people online have said to wait 24 to 36 hours, 48 hours, that kind of thing. I've been able to get these opened within, I don't know, 12 to 14 hours. Now, if you do open it up around that time frame, the possibility does exist that the substrate bags themselves will still be relatively high temperature. Easy way to check, just get yourself one of those little thermometers, laser thermometers. If it's anything over 74 degrees, don't do anything with it. As a matter of fact, you'd want to kind of put it in a little maybe Tupperware bin that's been sprayed down with isopropyl alcohol. I use 99% isopropyl alcohol, not because I want to. I historically like to do the 91%, but in the midst of COVID, it seems like the only thing available is the 99 point whatever. Anyhow, so you let this sit, and the good news too is that, well, I plan on taking these out probably around 3:30, 4 o'clock tomorrow, getting them inoculated shortly thereafter. But you really can let the bags sit in these as long, I've heard, as long as a week. They're sterilized environments inside. They're not going anywhere. I mean, as long as they're not being stored in subarctic temperatures, you know, I mean, the bags inside will do just fine. So yeah, I am pretty much done for the night. It's a little bit after 10 o'clock. I started this, I want to say around 4:15, so I'm getting pretty good at this. I'm doing this just under 5.5 hours, or just over 5.5 hours. So that's it for me right now. I am cold. I am hungry. I think it's time for me to go back into the house and get some dinner. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. And, you know, any questions or anything like that, just put it down below. Thanks.